I was. Okay, we're there.
I know it happened so long ago. It's hard, isn't it?
Yeah, all right. I think it's my turn. I'd like to call order the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority meeting for February 1st. Susan, would you please call the roll?
I'd be delighted. Nuka Clark.
Russ Collins.
Here.
Bob Gunzel. Lee Gunn.
Here.
Roger Hewitt.
Here.
John Heifcha.
Here.
Joan Lowenstein.
Here.
John Mowat.
Here.
Nader Nassif.
Here.
Keith Orr. Sandy Smith.
Here.
John Splitt.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is audience participation. There are 4 people who have signed up. You each get 4 minutes. The first person to speak is Jody Lanning.
Good afternoon. My name is Jody Lanning. Sorry. Okay. My name is Jody Lanning, and I'm the owner of Lanning Outdoor Advertising. I met with the mayor about 3 weeks ago and presented a wall mural public art. What I want to say is a shared opportunity for the city and Lanning Outdoor Advertising. I'm going to make this as brief as I can.
You need to just take this paper off of the projector. Yeah.
First of all, I've been in the advertising industry for about 18 years. And I was down in the Atlanta and Kentucky market, and I moved back to Michigan about 3 years ago. And I've been noticing just in a lot of other cities of how public art is being utilized and how important it is in the heart of the cities. And I went around and took pictures. First of all, let's just go to the benefits of public art, and this is stuff you guys already know, but it improves the aesthetic quality of public spaces and structures, provide cultural and recreational opportunities, contributes to the local heritage, stimulates economic activity, and promotes the general welfare of the community. I went around and took pictures of the city parking garages, because the idea is to do a shared revenue opportunity where I rent the wall space off of city parking garages and public buildings, the city buildings, to do, went around, and you'll see that this art is just stuff that my art director had found, but the idea is to use local artists, whether it's photography classes, the U of M, Eastern, anything of the public here where we can display their art. Now, how is this going to get paid for is through a sponsorship. And that's my job of Lanning Outdoor, is to go out and establish these relationships, because this is going to have to be paid for. To give you an idea, I mean, I don't know until I really get out there. But like I said, I've been in the business for a while. That particular wall could probably generate about $5,000 worth of income per month. And what my proposal is to the city is a 50% share. So whatever the walls generate, I split it back 50% back to the city of Ann Arbor. And then also what I'd like to do out of some of that is to put 10% aside for scholarships. I just want to be a part of something that's bigger and more than just about business. And this just gives you some more ideas on some city parking garages. And you could even do the slide, but I just wanted to give you an example of what this could look like. And also the art would not just come from me, it would be maybe we would have a board of 4 people that sat and made the decision on what art we did put up there. The decision would not be all up to me, it would be up to the city. There, I got your office in there, Mayor. So it's really a simple concept, and I do notice that in the ordinances that I've read and from the DDA and all that you all have been looking at ways to bring public art into the city. And I would love to be a part of that. I'd love for Lanning Outdoor Advertising to be able to bring something like this to the city. And again, the only thing that Lanning needs is the wall space to do that. I would build the relationships with all the departments to get the photography. I would do all the sales. I would handle all the installations. So really, it would be a very turnkey opportunity that wouldn't take anything on your side. I just would be the wall space.
Thank you, Ms.
Thanks.
The next person is Matthew Barrett.
I have some comments and questions about parking, and maybe something you guys will hear a lot about with the parking rates changing today. But I'm concerned with two things. Short-term parking for library patrons, and the changes that occurred when the construction began, where the new structure is, and the changes that are occurring today. In the past, if you recall, there was publicized, signed 10-minute grace period parking at the lot next to the library, and that was used by library patrons extensively. We tend to go to the library about twice a week, without exaggeration. When we go, we're usually dropping off and picking up, having already reserved books online, so we're there very short periods of time. And it's usually 6, 7, 8, 10, 12 minutes. So we frequently came and went under the grace period. When the construction began and parking moved to the new permeable paving lot across the street, there was no signage to indicate there was a grace period, and when we asked the library staff, they said that was gone. So we've been paying 60 cents a time to pick up and check out books, and for us, $1.50 a week. So I'm concerned to get that 10-minute grace period back. What I've just discovered this week through asking is that there is, in fact, a 10-minute grace period. When you come into the lot, you can leave within 10 minutes without paying, but it's not publicized. And some of the operational details of how that works with the machine would make that problematic. You might get to the machine at 9.5 minutes or just over 10 minutes, and the gate wouldn't go up for you, and now you would block other people from leaving the lot. So one question is whether that was intentional to remove the 10-minute grace period that had existed before for library patrons, and if we're comfortable with, for my family, in excess of about $110 a year surcharge for library use, in terms of just practical real dollars what we spent. Now that's before. With the change from half-hour time metering to hour metering, a 10-minute stay in a parking lot is charged at a rate of about $8.40 an hour. And this is with technology. So in other words, if you go for 10 minutes and you pay $1.30, I actually figured this at $1.40. I missed the fact that we're not up to $1.40 yet today. The effective parking rate is very, very different than the rates that are advertised. Because the system always rounds up, never down, that's not a system that kind of balances out. It is simply true that the Ann Arbor parking rates will be seriously underrepresented as they're advertised. And as that example of a 10-minute or 11-minute parking period at that lot to pick up and drop off a book, you're going to pay $1.30 or $1.40. And at an hourly rate, that's over $8 an hour. I think that's inappropriate. I think that's not something that the DDA could have comfortably presented to the city. We're going to raise short-term rates to $8 an hour. And I think that actual effective rate is hidden in the move from a half-hour to hour-long periods. Whether intentional or not, that is in fact how the system works. I also recognize the need to generate revenue. Practically, what I would suggest is that the systems be set up to meter parking for what you actually use, and effective rates be set to the same as actual publicized rates. Whatever we need to charge per hour, per minute for parking to generate the revenues that are needed to be generated, that's what should be advertised. $1.40 is in fact it's misleading for anyone who parks for 20 minutes, 15 minutes, parks for 32 minutes. At the old way, that was the case. So I am not at all comfortable with the half-hour to hour changes. Most specifically, I would like to see us set up something so that there is a fully functional 10-minute grace period again, as there had been for years, currently in the lot across the street and in the new lot when it becomes active.
Thank you. Your time is up, sir. Thank you for coming. The next person on the list is Dan Kettlar.
Hi, I'm Dan Kettler. I represent a project called 618 South Main. And I've got some booklets here if you'd like to pass them around. I think we should get out there so there's not a couple more. We're here, and with John Bile, who's an attorney with Warner Norcross and Judd, to talk to you about this 618 South Main. It's in the southernmost portion of the DDA on South Main. It's a gateway project. It's developed for young professionals. It's a urban project. It's in the D2 zoning, which is the buffer zoning between downtown zoning and the community. A week and a half ago, we went through the Ann Arbor Planning Commission. We were approved 8-0 for this project, and we will soon go on to City Council. But in the interim, this is a brownfield site, and we are looking to the DDA to work with us because you will capture the increased revenue from this, and we need some of that revenue for our project. We've laid out some of that idea in this booklet I've given to you. John will talk to you a little bit more about this. The project itself is roughly 180 to 190 apartments. They'll be set up for young professionals. It is a process. It is a community that has a lot of amenities just for this age group, specific for it. We've put in 2 layers of underground parking. We didn't do surface parking, which we easily could have, but it's twice the parking that's required by the city. And it is at the request of the city and the community because there's parking problems in the Old West Side. And so what we've done with this courtyard, which is about 18,000 square feet, is we've created a rain garden out of it. And this is going to be a silver LEED certified building. And this rain garden is a very interesting process that a young lady, Shannon Gibrando, who owns Insight Design, she's a landscape architect, designed. She created a series of rain gardens in this area. So at this point, about 130, 150,000 gallons of water a year, stormwater, goes into the Allen Creek drain. This rain garden will capture all of that water. None of it will go into the storm drain. It's a very unique process. Wasn't familiar with it before I started it. I'm delighted by it. I'm delighted by the process we've gone through it to obtain it. Our relationships with the community have been very nice. They've been helpful. We had a design guideline committee that we went with, interacted with, have brought some good ideas to the project, which we've amended by. We think it's a great addition to the community. It'll change the sense when you're coming into Ann Arbor, into the downtown. We also are pointing out or suggesting that we redo the streetscape from our space to downtown, which is in front of Ashley Muse. That's sort of a no man's land right now. The Old West Side would like to see it. I've talked to Mike Anglin about it. He's very strong in this process. He has actually requested that we do a traffic calming, he calls it, which takes 1 lane of traffic and put it into parking along that side, down to the bottom of the DDA. That's something he's very interested in, but he's also interested in redoing the streetscape. We've put a proposal together, which is an outline for discussion that we'd like to discuss with you. My understanding is you will put this to a committee. We'd love to come and work out the details on this and move forward on how this works. We think it's a great project. It's a good addition to the city. These young people are what we need in the community to make it vital and to create the future of Ann Arbor and not just deal with the past. So we look forward to your feedback and support on this, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you, Mr. Kevlar. The next person is Mr. John Bile.
Thank you very much. I'm John Bile. As Dan said, I'm with Warner Norcross and Judd, and I often work on brownfield projects. I've worked on several here in Ann Arbor. This site is contaminated with petroleum contamination from an underground tank. On top of that, as you've heard from Dan, with subsurface parking 2 levels, that obviously is much more costly than surface parking, and so there are a number of challenges. As part of this project, we would clean up the contamination and so forth. So we've started the application process with the state under what's known as a Community Revitalization Program. This is a new program that is the successor to the Brownfield credits you may be familiar with. And one of the first things the state asked us, of course, was, well, what would the local contribution be? And the local contribution here would likely come through the DDA, as you've done with some of the other Brownfield projects in the past. If this project happens, it's a substantial investment, $25 million, perhaps more, and it would create new taxable value in the range of maybe $10 million a year. And just to be conservative, we assumed $9.5 million in new taxable value. Well, that would generate over $250,000 in new tax revenue, new tax increment revenue to the DDA. a substantial amount. And if there's any inflation, you can just see that over a long period it would generate an awful lot of new revenue. There are a number of expenses that the DDA in the past has supported through grants and similar measures, public infrastructure items in the right-of-way. So that might include streetscaping and utilities and that sort of thing. And those are expenses certainly that will be incurred for this project. There are also green or sustainability features that Dan referred to that the DDA has supported in the past. In this case, there will be solar panels, and there'll be this rain garden that addresses all of the stormwater runoff from the site, which is a terrific but expensive proposition. In the booklet that you have, Appendix B includes a list of these expenses related to the project, around $2 million, $2.3 million in these related expenses. As Dan mentioned, there's also some streetscaping improvements that could be made between here for 2 blocks to the north, running up till just about William from this location. And the estimate for that is about $350,000 to $450,000. Again, Appendix C in the booklet details those streetscape improvements. So what we propose, and this is in the booklet, is that the developer would pay initially all of these expenses up front, but then 6 months after the project is completed and it's been issued a certificate of occupancy, then we would propose that the DDA would reimburse up to $1 million of those public infrastructure and sustainability expenses that were incurred by the project. And the certificate of occupancy is expected in early 2014, so we're looking to mid to late 2014. So the first $1 million plus the expenses for the main street improvements, the streetscape improvements, which would be about another $400,000 or so. And then the balance, which would be about another $1 million or so, we're proposing would be reimbursed over time from the tax increment that's actually captured from this project by the DDA. And if it's $250,000 a year, what we've proposed is that a portion of that, 75% of that, would be captured and used to reimburse these other eligible public infrastructure sustainability feature expenses. And it would take about just capturing 75%, leaving the rest to use for other projects and so forth. It would take about 6 years to reimburse those expenses. So it's kind of a novel way, but we're trying to come up with an approach that might have some appeal to the DDA in terms of timing and what the cash needs are, and so that's the idea. There is to have them front the expenses and being reimbursed over time. So look forward to working with you.
Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is Ray Detter, Downtown Area Citizens Advisory Board.
Last night, Eleanor Lynn and Mark Gerstein, who live on Forest Court, it's just south of the new 601 Forest project, joined the Citizens Advisory Council along with other leaders from the North Burns Park Neighborhood Association. And they filled us in on the attempt of the owners of an apartment building at 1320 South University to have their D2 zoning changed to D1. Instead of a 6-story building permitted in D2, they want to build a 15-story building on their site. Their proposal comes before the Planning Commission next Tuesday, and the CAC will join others in opposing it. D2 zoning, by the way, is meant to protect neighborhoods. It's there for a reason. And Dan Kettler has shown us what you can do on D2, a lot, and good stuff, too. The Downtown Area CAC has always been committed to the careful planning of downtown as well as more downtown housing. And our members were part of the process of shaping the first downtown plan of 1988, as well as the most recent one adopted in 2010, the Central Area Plan of 1992, the DDA Development Plan of 2003, and most recently, the Calthorpe Study and the whole A2D2 development of zoning, and also the A2D2 design guidelines and the setting up of a design guidelines board. That's all been a part of a process of planning, community planning. The CIC also supports the DDA's construction of the library underground parking and the library lot underground parking as part of a comprehensive parking transportation management plan for the future of downtown. And you've done a good job of integrating that into the nature of the future with regard to what it is that we might do. We also strongly support the DDA's planning implementation process that builds on all city plans to collect a community framework for how 5 downtown city properties can be reused and redeveloped for a higher, better purpose to meet our community goals. The Midtown Discovery and outreach efforts, and we strongly support that particular direction because, again, it's dependent upon downtown plans for our area that have been adopted. And future expectations for the downtown should, we feel, always be built on adopted city plans and policies. That's why the Downtown Area CAC, along with others, will join in strongly opposing the proposal to change 1320 from D2 to D1. We're generally pleased with the results and progress of city planning, whether it's 601 Forest, Zaragoza 1 and 2, Varsity, and as I said, 618 South Main, that have all attempted. We perhaps could make it a little bit better in terms of the results, but we were really satisfied with the nature of that direction. And last Thursday, of course, we all celebrated the groundbreaking at Village Green City Place Apartments after many years of effort. We intend to work to make downtown planning even better, but to celebrate the nature of what we're doing if it's following the nature of city plans. Now, D2 at this particular point is not only at 618 South Main, almost all of Carytown is D2. We did that for a reason. It was to protect the surrounding neighborhoods. And to have somebody come in at this particular point and want to already change the nature of the zoning, which was adopted not just in some reckless way, but adopted after careful thought, is simply wrong with regard to meeting the expectations that we have for the community. In fact, would undermine those expectations and make everyone fearful of decisions in the future. So we're certainly going to oppose the change of that D2 to D1. But last night also we got another example of planning. I mean, Susan Polly was at the meeting and she gave us a very comprehensive report with regard to the relationship between downtown transportation issues, county issues, and also issues of railroad and buses and transportation in southeastern Michigan. Marcia Chamberlain, who's a member of the Citizens Advisory Council, gave us also an image really of the 3 to 5 year plan which is being developed with regard to public art in the downtown. We support all of those directions because those are directions that are supported by community sorts of plans, and we hope to work on those in the future. Thank you.
The next item is the Get Downtown presentation by Nancy Shore. And I think you have a PowerPoint, so if you could all move, thank you.
Hello there. I'm Nancy Shore from the Get Downtown program, and I'd like you to think about this as your State of the Commute address. And I will let you know that the state of the commute is strong. As you will see in this presentation, what I'm going to share with you today are a very brief synopsis of the results from our 2011 Employer and Employee Survey of employees and employers in downtown Ann Arbor. And if I can figure out how to use this thing, which is not going to be my... You want to show me how to do this? Okay, thank you. So, first of all, just to reiterate, the Get Downtown program, we are a collaboration between the Ann Arbor Downtown Development Authority, the City of Ann Arbor, and the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority. We are employed by the Ann Arbor Transportation Authority, but receive a huge amount of funding from the DDA, especially for Go Passes, which you'll see in this survey are highly coveted by downtown employees. So want to get into the survey right now. Every 2 years, the Get Downtown program does a survey of employers and employees of downtown Ann Arbor, and this is one of the ways that we interface with employees and employers downtown. We also do all kinds of online support. We do outreach activities, presentations, the commuter challenge. So this is just one way that we interface with employers and employees. And we did an online survey. We looked at everybody who was in our database of downtown employers, and of those people, we have 260 employers that participated. And you can see here a selection of some of those employers, and we had a pretty good representation of all of the employers in downtown in terms of industry. A little bit low in the food service industry, but it's not a huge enough amount to make this something that's not representative. It was pretty representative in general. So one of the questions that we asked employers, we wanted to get a sense of, we all know that parking is always talked about employers as something that's very important for them to attract customers and employees. We also wanted to know on the flip side, how important is it for employers to have a wide variety of transportation options available for them to attract high quality workers to their jobs? And one of the things that we saw was that having a wide variety of options is an employee recruitment tool. A lot of employers, over 70%, said that having a wide variety of transportation options and not just parking makes it easier for them to recruit high-quality workers. So this is, again, reinforcing the DDA focusing on integrating transportation and parking is something that employers are really interested in. And you might not hear that a lot, but we have heard from employers that that is the case. Moving on. We also looked at customers and clients. So in addition to looking at just employees, what are employers saying about how important is it for them to have a wide variety of transportation options to have their customers come down and shop and do business with them? And what we saw again is overwhelming majority of employers are telling us, yes, we need to have a lot of transportation options, especially in the sectors of retail, restaurants, walk-in traffic salons. Over 50% of them just said it's very important for them to be able to walk and bike and bus to their locations in addition to having parking. And so I think this is, again, reinforcing that supporting these different transportation options and including also enhancing them is something that is good for downtown businesses, and it's going to really serve as a way to attract more customers downtown. In terms of employer comments, we also did ask them to tell us some open-ended comments, and what we saw was the Go Pass, something that is substantially supported by the DDA, and without the DDA wouldn't be possible. That Go Pass is something that a lot of employers say, this is one of the only benefits we can offer our employees. And it's something that employees cherish, it's something that they find very important, and in addition to that, having the Get on Town program in this community also enables employers to attract high-quality employees, helps reduce turnover. So again, we're hearing that reinforcement that employers do want a wide variety of transportation options, including parking as well as all the other options that they have available. So now next, moving on to the employee survey. We asked the employers in the online survey if we could also survey their employees, and we had a selection of 11 different downtown employers that allowed us to survey their employees as well. We did both online as well as paper surveys, and we had 279 employees that took that survey. It's a good representative sample of all downtown employees. So one of the interesting things that we found is that we did see in this particular survey that comparing to the 2009 and 2000 census, 2009 survey we conducted in the 2000 census, that less people reported driving alone, and we also saw an increase in public transit use as well as an increase in bicycle use. And that public transit increase can also be borne out in the Go Pass data that we've seen recently. Between 2010 and 2011, we saw a 15% increase in Go Pass ridership. We had our highest Go Pass ridership levels ever in August, and so we are seeing, I think what this is indicating is that both the quality of the transit is increasing, and so more people are using it, but also there's a higher comfort level among downtown employees of using public transportation to get to work. So that's really positive, but also interesting in terms of implications for the DDA. What does it mean that we've got 6% employees now that are biking to work as opposed to 2% in 2009? What does that mean for bike parking and for looking at how people are navigating the downtown by bicycle? It's just something maybe to think about as we continue to look at these numbers and if they might be increasing. So another question we asked was, how far away are people coming who are working in the downtown? And this is one-way commute. And what we saw is that the majority of employees are coming from 10 miles or less to work. And so that's going to be, Ypsilanti is about 10 miles away. And so that's about as far as most employees are coming. We do have another bump at over 15 miles, so these are people coming from Lansing and Toledo and really far out. But I think what this shows is that there are a lot of employees that are within an area that they could use public transportation if it was available to them. Further breaking down these numbers, something else that we found that was really interesting is there is this breaking point between 2 miles to less than 4 miles and 4 miles to less than 10 miles, where at 2 to 4 miles, 32% of people are driving alone all the way. At 4 miles or more, all of a sudden 74% of people are driving alone. So what is about 4 miles away? Well, that's about the city limits of Ann Arbor. So one of the things that this is telling us is that if you live in Ann Arbor, you're much more likely to use different types of transportation to get to work. And it's probably because we have such a good system here. We have buses that are running pretty frequently. We have a good bike infrastructure and walk infrastructure. But as you get outside of that, it becomes a little bit harder for you to use these different elements. But I don't see any reason why somebody living 10 miles away shouldn't be able to take the bus to get to work. But we know right now, because of the way that the transit is associated, it is a little bit harder because it's less convenient. So this is, again, I think an argument for if we do increase transit access and biking and walking to outside of that 4 mile radius, I'd be very surprised if we didn't see a bump in the numbers of people that are using those services. Something else we looked at is, okay, we know that we had a certain amount of people that say, I typically get to work this way. Well, what about that other group of people that are occasionally doing something when the weather's nice or when they're looking to save some money on gas? And one of the things we saw with biking to work is we've got another 16% of employees that are telling us, 10 or more times last year I did use my bike. And so that means that there's, about 22% of people that are coming downtown by bike as employees. And so that also raises questions about what does that mean for how we're focusing on transportation in the downtown for those users. And then looking at busing, it's even more significant, which is about 40% of all employees said that, I've used the bus at least one time in the last year. So what is this showing us is that there's a lot more people that are comfortable using the bus. It's not something that's foreign to a lot of downtown employees. And so that does raise questions about, well, if we continue to enhance that transportation choice, what would it look like in terms of this graph in a couple of years? So focusing on the Go Pass now, this is reinforcing what we talked about with employers, and what we see is that a majority of employees, 63%, are telling us this pass is an important benefit to my job. And again, this is really pointing to the fact that the DDA, by focusing on alternative transportation as well as parking, is continuing to provide benefits to downtown employees as well as the downtown business climate as a whole. And so I think that that's a thank you to you and to show you how much the Go Pass is appreciated by employees. The final series of surveys questions I want to share with you are, we did ask people within the last year, how has your mode of transportation changed? And I just want you to focus on the three at the very left-hand corner here. And what it showed us is that the top commuting changes that we saw with people are they either drive alone all the way, they used to do that, and now they're busing all the way, they drove alone all the way, and now they're walking, or they drove alone and now they're using park and ride. So again, we're significantly seeing that there are a lot more employees saying, I'm getting more comfortable using the bus, I'm getting more comfortable using park and ride, and now I'm considering walking. And I think that's going to continue to increase because we know that gas prices, again, are on the rise. I think that we're going to continue to see this. But once again, reinforcing, public transportation is becoming more comfortable for people to use. And then the last slide is, okay, then why did you make these changes? And significantly, one of the things we saw is that a lot of employees say, well, I was able to do this because I moved. And again, reinforcing that we really do see that the closer that somebody lives to downtown, the more likely it is that they're going to walk and take public transit and bike. I think it reinforces for DDA the implications of having more residents downtown, thinking about how you can continue to do that, because it will reduce the numbers of people that are driving and parking downtown, which, again, frees up spaces for customers. And then secondly, the Go Pass. So we do have a lot of people saying, this is why my transportation mode changed, and it does show that it is something that does change people's behavior. So that's a very short synopsis of our survey. We have been giving reports to the Operations and Transportation Committee, and we're going to do our second half of that at the next meeting. So if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Appreciate that. Are there any communications from DDA members at this time? Okay. The next item is approval of minutes for the January 4th meeting. Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Second. Is there any additions or corrections? All in favor say aye. Aye. Very well. Minutes have been approved. The next item is subcommittee reports, transportations, operations, and capital improvements. Shall we start with Roger Hewitt?
First, let's go through the quarterly financial statements, which are on page 8 of your packet. So the financial statements for the first half of our fiscal year, which runs from July through June. If we look under TIF, we have received most, although quite not all, of what we anticipate of our TIF income. We expect the revenue to be about $3.9 million. When it's all said and done, we've got about 3.6 of that in already. Operating expenses are slightly under year-to-date versus budgeted, but very close to what we anticipated. Capital expenditures are considerably less so far, and that has a lot to do with timing of the construction invoices that come in. We anticipate that we'll be very close at the end of the year to what our budgeted number is. But again, it's the 5th and Division project and also the TIF part of the underground parking structure. And again, a lot of that has to do just with the timing of the construction invoices. So as you see, net expenses, we anticipate at the moment, we look like we're going to, expenses are going to be within 5%, or right around within 5% variation of what our budgeted amount is. So fairly close to what we anticipated at the moment. Again, a lot of this has to do with the timing of the construction invoices when they come in. Moving on to parking. Parking revenue is slightly below what we have budgeted year to date, although we anticipate by the year end we're actually going to have be somewhat over our budgeted amount of revenue. We expect it to be close to $17 million in parking revenue for this coming fiscal year, this current fiscal year. Operating expenses at the moment are lower. This does also include capital expenses in here, and again, a lot of this has to do with the timing of both when the construction invoices come in and when the bond reimbursements come in. So this is going to, these numbers is going to be fluctuating somewhat until the construction is completed and all the bills are in and paid. Direct parking expenses, which is the cost of operating the structures, as well as the money we pay to the city under the parking agreement. And again, we anticipate, we're slightly under budget right now, anticipate being right about where we have budgeted those expenses to be. So overall, again, given the variations of construction and bond reimbursement, nothing unusual to report versus what we had originally budgeted. Parking maintenance fund, we have not made the transfer into that fund as yet. We have scaled back, as we've mentioned in the past, our routine maintenance, annual maintenance in the parking system this last fiscal year, just to make sure we've got plenty of cushion as we complete the construction of the underground parking structure. As it was also influenced with our new parking agreement, we want to make sure that we have sufficient cash reserves, so we are scaling back, as we have reported earlier, on some of the maintenance. None of it structural in nature, all what we would label cosmetic maintenance in the structures. And again, for those who don't know, we have done such a good job in maintaining our parking structures over the last 10 or 15 years that we are well ahead of any anticipated major maintenance. We do have Carl Walker comes through every 5 years, does another engineering study, and gives us an estimated budget. Again, every time we do those, they come back that we're really doing better than they anticipated. Art Lowe, our new director of Republic Parking here, has told us that our structures for municipal structures are probably some of the best municipally maintained structures in the country for municipal structures. And we should all be proud of the job we've done up to this point in maintaining those. And there's certainly everything we're doing now is paying off in this time where our fund balances are going to be a little low for a few years. So as you can see, our anticipated maintenance year end is going to be about $300,000 rather than the $2 million we originally budgeted. Under housing, also our anticipated operating expenses are going to be significantly less, primarily due to the Avalon grant that we had budgeted to take, about $500,000 that we had budgeted to take place in this fiscal year, that for the Near North project, that we believe is not going to be used in this fiscal year. Apparently the project is not going forward at the moment, and so we do not know when that granted request is going to come through, but we don't expect it to be this year. And that's a quick summary. We have a graphic representation on the other side. Again, if all expenses came in evenly throughout the year and all revenues came in evenly, we'd be at 50% on everything. As you can see on TIF, we have almost all our TIF in on our income, as I mentioned. Operating expenses, because of capital expenses, are still somewhat low, under budgeted. Parking, again, is income is low again. due to the construction. Fairly straightforward. So I, and with perhaps Joe's assistance, would be glad to address any questions. Okay. All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the parking report. We have actually three, both the month of December, a 3-month and a 6-month. They're all telling about the same story, though. Revenues are up between 9 to 10%, which is greater than the rate increase that has gone through. So we are, essentially the public is telling us that they are coming in greater numbers than they have been coming in, and that's borne out by the hourly patrons. Again, if you look just in the month of December, that's 12,500 more parking tickets were pulled in structures and surface lots than were in the same December a year ago. So essentially, 12,500 more trips into downtown, not counting parking meters, than in the previous year. These are pretty strong numbers in an economy that is not, certainly booming right now. We'll point out that the First and Washington lot has closed now for the construction of the Village Green project.
Roger, what happened at Liberty Square? Revenues
drop.
are down, but the hourly patrons are up.
On a year-to-year comparison, last year, we had a lot of construction traffic.
That's right. Yeah, that was primarily the North Quad dorm construction. There were a lot of construction workers in that structure. Thanks, Joe. See a very similar story on the quarter. Again, revenues up over 9%, hourly patrons up 2.5%. I think particularly telling, if you look at the 6-month report on page 7, and the hourly patrons, over 43,000 more hourly patrons, or more trips into the parking system than in the same 6 months of the previous year. So I think at council we showed that we had over the previous 5 years an additional 450,000 trips, and that trend is clearly continuing. If this holds true for a period of a year, that's another roughly 90,000 trips into the parking system. If nothing else, it shows a very strong demand. It should point out, if you're looking at changes in the in the usage, again, the First and Washington lot being closed has reduced there. The Fifth and William surface lot is also down somewhat. That's due to construction. We've taken out part of that lot has been being used for construction of the underground structure, and usage of that has dropped a little bit because of that. So, again, I, with Joe's help, will try and answer any questions.
Roger, can you just address the issue that one of our speakers brought up about the 10-minute parking for the library and what our plans are for the new structure?
Sure, I can. I'll let Joe. I'll start, and Joe may need to fill me in. In the new structure, well, first of all, as we go to the hourly parking, there will be a 10-minute grace period in that, in both surface lots and in parking structures. So yes, the 10-minute grace period is still there. It is not going away. Indeed, is going to be expanded. So that will be system-wide, other than, of course, the parking meters themselves. But yes, there is a 10-minute grace period.
For person
For-
For person lots, right?
No, for all surface or parking structures.
Even if it's a mechanical one.
Yeah, I believe so. Yes.
There is a 10-minute grace period at the 50th lot. I think the advertising he was speaking of was that we had dedicated 2 spots in the library lot for library patrons under 10 minutes book drop. We do not have the 2 dedicated spots in the 5th and William lot when we closed. It's a much smaller lot. We thought that we'd need all the parking spaces to be available to everybody. So there has been a 10-minute grace period. In fact, you can stretch it to 15 if you try. Because once you throw it in the machine that's validated, you have another 5 minutes to get out of the lot.
Yeah. So, Joe, you just let the secret out of the bag. It's really 15 minutes.
Roger, I'd also like to point out that there are 2 5-minute quick in and out parking places for the library on East William Street. Just go around the corner and go in the library, so those are available.
As far as the new underground parking structure, we will be using a walk-up pay system, which is something that a number of cities around the state are using. There will be on the surface plaza level and on the first 2 levels underground automatic pay stations where you walk up and you put in either cash or a credit card in. You pull a ticket on the way in. When you're done, you go to one of these machines and you're ready to leave. You put your ticket in, pay with either a credit card or cash, pull your ticket out, and then you've got 5 minutes to get out of the structure. But also on levels 1 and 2 underground, there will also be at the center location a manned booth, so you can go up and deal with a human being if that's your preference on those. We don't, at least at this point, anticipate putting anything right now on levels 3 and 4 underground because we expect those to be primarily, if not exclusively, monthly parking initially.
Do we know what will be along the new street created between?
There are parking spaces.
And 5th?
Yeah, there are parking spaces on that street. I'm not sure how many.
Those will be in the e-park system.
They will be in the e-park system. I'm not sure how many parking spaces are going to be on there. And I walked through it last week.
Are those on the west side of the street, Joe, or?
They're on both sides
Both sides.
of Library Lane. I think there's a total of 8.
8?
We're not talking about 5.
Mm-hmm. Right on the street. As well as a place for buses to park to drop off people visiting, busloads of people visiting the library.
Okay, any other questions for Roger? Okay, we'll move on to the resolution.
Okay. Turn to
Page 18.
We have our annual resolution to approve a year-end management fee for Republic Parking for management of the DDA parking facilities, and I would like to move this resolution for the committee.
Is there support? Okay, it's been moved and supported.
Okay. As you can read here, according to our contract with Republic Parking, they have a total maximum management fee of $200,000 a year for managing the system. $150,000 of that is guaranteed under the contract. The remaining $50,000 is based on performance under a number of criteria that are listed on the following pages. Both our own inspections, surveys of customers, how they handled their budget, whether they were over or under budget on their operating expenses, how the accounts receivables, percentage of dead tickets. Staff weighed all of these criteria, and you can read their overall assessment on page 20. And their recommendation is that the management fee this year, the discretionary part is $45,000 versus the maximum of $50,000. Committee reviewed these criteria and the overall recommendation and support the $45,000 incentive part of the management contract.
Any discussion on the resolution? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? It passes. Thank you very much. Now we move to John Split, capital improvements.
My report on the underground structure is going to be much like last month's report. We're in winter mode, so things are moving along, but a little bit more slowly, and most of the work is going on below the surface. Walls continue to be poured. They should be completed sometime in March. Mechanicals, electrical, elevators are all being installed, and that work progresses. And the surface work will begin probably sometime between March 15th, April 15th, depending upon when the weather breaks. And at that point, you'll see waterproofing and concrete going in on the surface.
You did mean winter in quotes, right?
Yeah, even though it is a very mild winter, it is not quite mild enough.
Don't jinx it.
To be waterproofing on the surface. There is some waterproofing work actually going on in the detention system
I was
before
referring
that.
mostly to today and
Yeah.
yesterday.
So again, work continues, and that's it.
Thank you. Next for
Just-
your,
can I just-
go ahead.
I was,
Sorry.
Fortunate enough to be able to take a tour of the structure last week, and although I'm certainly biased, it's for an underground parking structure, it's pretty cool looking. It's got very high ceilings. The parts where they've already painted the ceilings are certainly bright, and it's a very open feel to it. Is actually the opposite of claustrophobic. The ceiling height is 2 feet higher than, for instance, the Maynard parking structure. Really, you can stand in one spot in the middle of a floor and see the entire structure, and it's big down there too. It's a lot of space. The architectural detailing is very impressive on the design. I think I want to particularly compliment Carl Lukenbach. Did a spectacular job with the stairwells. I think everyone's going to be impressed when they see what those stairwells look like in there. In fact, we've got one picture with the sun shining, and you can look at the bottom of look at the stairwell and see the sun shining on the floor of the garage, and without recognizing that floor is 4 stories underground, the sun shining down into it. So it's going to be, I think, when people get a chance to go through it, it's going to be pretty impressive. Little editorial there.
We appreciate it. John Moet, Transportation.
Thanks, Lee. I want to thank Nancy Shore. I think that was a great sort of condensed version of the presentation she gave to our subcommittee last week. But I thought it would be helpful for everyone to see it, and also the public to get a feel for some of the changes that are happening. And to me, what becomes very important is not just commuter transportation. I think there's it's part of a trend in the changes to downtown where we're becoming more and more urban. We've talked a lot about suburban versus urban, and you have folks, the person who wants to come into town and drop off a book for 10 minutes and get out of town. Well, if you think about people using transit to get into town, they're probably going to be here longer periods of time doing other things downtown. Or as we, see more and more development of downtown and more people living downtown, more people on the streets, I think, is a lot of what we're going to see. I think we're seeing it already. And part of what I'd hope the board will think about is, when we think about that transportation piece, everything from what it means to business development downtown, what it means to our looking at the 5 parcels, or Ray, you referred to it, Midtown Discovery. I think the latest name is now Connecting Williams Street, just so folks start to be aware. But to me, it becomes very important because if you think about Blake becoming a more robust center, we start going to county-wide service. Nancy alluded to those people coming from more than 4 miles away. There might be a lot more people coming through Blake. And what does that mean to that area? The library, as things change at the library. So to me, it becomes important as best we can to paint a picture of how all these different parts connect. Our parking system, the transportation, our efforts with these parcels, signage downtown, all these things all connect, and we don't get as much opportunity as we might to talk about those connection points. So I just wanted to sort of bring it up with people to be thinking about, because I think we are seeing a pretty big change when we see more of these developments with students near downtown. I think a lot of those folks are going to be walking around. They're going to probably be using transit more, I would think. So it's just something that I think is an important thing. And the other piece is to remember with Nancy doing this, there's a lot of data she has. So if there is information that we need to parse out of there that would be site-specific or project-specific, I'm sure Nancy would be happy to help us with that. And as we look at surveys in the future, what other information could we glean and give feedback to Nancy on questions to ask? So I just wanted to try to take the opportunity to, have people just think about the connections between all this. That we so much focus on each individual thing without trying to put the pieces together. And so as you're thinking about, and I guess especially, our project right now with the connecting William Street and those parcels, I'd ask people to ponder, what this all means and the nature of the change of downtown coming up in this next 10, 15 years. That's my only little piece, because at our last Transportation Committee meeting, Nancy was the feature with her survey. And if anybody obviously wants to see the full survey results, I'm sure Nancy would be more than happy to make it available.
Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item is partnerships. Joan Lowenstein.
Yep. Sandy and I co-chair this, and this time it's my turn to report. We had a meeting of our partnerships committee and focused on some economic development issues. We had Mike Girard and Randy Moss from Swisher, say that quickly, commercial coming to speak to us. Many of you probably received their report that they put out annually about downtown vacancy, and the report was a good one. As we know, Ann Arbor is somewhat immunized from some of the economic downturn, and in fact, I think it was it this week, Mayor, that U.S. News and World Report said it's one of the 10 best places to get a job.
Seventh best.
Is it seventh? Was it U.S. News and World Report or Fortune Mag? I can't remember who it was. Anyway, one of those places that does those things. It's in the top 10 of best places to get a job, and that's reflected by this report that we got from Mike and from Randy. Downtown office vacancy rate decreased by over 2.5% in 2011. And there was a 40% increase in lease dollar volume. So businesses are feeling more confident, and they're more willing to commit to longer leases. Instead of just a short-term lease, they're willing to show some optimism. They noted that many companies that are looking to expand have difficulty finding a large enough space downtown, and we've talked about this a lot here, and in terms of our development strategy, that there are places that really could use larger floor plates. So we know that's going on. Sandy shared her expertise in regard to residential sales and rentals, that sale prices are rebounding from their lows in 2009. There's a demand for second-story lofts and conversion-type units, and the people who want those kinds of things are mostly empty nesters and young professionals who are looking for an urban lifestyle and a smaller footprint. And that some of the young professionals are often not able to find something at their price point. We also got a report from Amber about the SEMCOG's forecast at the Southeast Michigan Council of Government that forecasts and collects all this kind of data for the county and the city through 2040, if we can look ahead that far. They estimate that the region's going to make a slow recovery over the next 30 years. And despite that slow regional activity, there's increased activity downtown, as we've seen from increased need for office and the parking report that Roger gave us, that there are more and more people coming downtown and using parking. We have indeed changed the name of our project, our development project, and it's the William Street, or Connecting William Street is what we're going to call it, so that people don't get mixed up between the Midtown Design District and what we're doing. So we are working on some of the social media and webinars and things like that we're going to be using to reach out to people for participation. We've identified over 100 stakeholder and community groups that we're going to be reaching out to, and that's all in progress. Part of this is going to be a community-wide survey that's going to be released mid to late February. We're kind of working on that now, developing things like a logo for our project and finalizing parts of the survey. So that is moving along, and we will have more to report next time as we get further with some of our outreach. Then, as an update is, as Ray Detter mentioned, there was the groundbreaking ceremony for Village Green City Place Apartments. Is that what it's called? That was January 26th. Now, our next partnerships meeting is scheduled for next Wednesday at 9. I think we had been talking about deferring it for this month because there really wasn't that much on the agenda for this. Are we still there, Susan and Sandy, with?
We received the 618 South Main Street brownfield. That could certainly be discussed. But I don't know that we have other items. The work that's going on with the parcels might need a little bit more time.
Yeah. So I'd like to suggest that we defer our meeting and just
To March.
Yeah, just to March, if that's okay with everybody.
Okay, thank you, Joe. Any other comments? Is there any other DDA business? Seeing none, are there any other people from the audience who wish to speak to us? I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Thank you. We stand adjourned.
So,